Hello and welcome to a very short little rant. I don't know, desperate conversation. This channel is predominantly focused on game design, reverse engineering games, and that mostly from a fan perspective and occasionally from a hobbyist developer perspective. We focus on design. The idea is you go through all this and you produce a fantastic game design document. I don't normally talk much about coding. I've been a software engineer for a couple of years. I don't consider myself to be fantastic at it. I'm still very much a junior. And I just don't think it's necessarily the most interesting content to talk about stuff like that. But I just need to get something off my chest because this week has been absolutely killing me on the engineering side, and the reason why is this: dialogue trees. Have you ever played an RPG or any other similar game and thought to yourself, it'd be really cool if they had like procedural dialogue in this? I wonder why so few games have attempted to do that. Well, after this week, I'm kind of getting an understanding as to why. I'm not going to show any of my functional game code on this channel, or indeed anywhere else for that matter. Part of that is because there are sort of proprietary ownership considerations, and the other part of it is that I am swimming in shame over it. Bloody hate sharing my code. I'm certainly not going to do it for a channel that I do mostly for fun. But in essence, what we have, there are a couple of ways. When we talk about dialogue trees, obviously you can do very, very simple dialogue trees. There. Where is it? And then you have, if we mark these as responses, and then the original. That's fantastic. I'm sorry to hear that. So yeah, and that's all good and well. But what a lot of these games do when we're talking about dialogue trees, particularly the more Western style ones, is you'll be looking at flags rather than simple just like a response comes in, you select a reply, and then that reply triggers another reply. I mean, you can do things like this with basically, I guess, just simple if-else trees will work perfectly fine for that. But the larger and deeper you go into the world of dialogue trees, we talk a lot about in coding about things being maintainable. And if you are a coder, scripter, or engineer, developer, I would really encourage you to think in terms of they say this in web development, but I'm increasingly seeing it's just as bloody true in game dev. Writing code is like 20% of your time. Maintaining it is 80%. And what it basically means is that, like, eventually you will program things, and then you will need to make changes or develop on that. And it's not about it's not about your code that you write at the start being bad. The code that you write at the start can be fantastic, but you want to be able to adapt to ideas and changes. You do not want to be married to whatever the operation was when you first did that. And I think that, you know, that's something that a lot of coders, you know, developers, engineers, kind of struggle with, because it's very easy to get sort of quite attached to what you've done and be, I guess, proud of it, and not want to be resistant to change. But good product development requires being responsive to change. We talked before, like, you know, on the channel, where it's like you can have the best idea in the world, but if you get halfway through making your game and some other idea has crept in and that bit is really fun, then you run with that bit. You know, you run with where the fun is, which means that you basically have to accept that things are going to change. So to that end, if you're writing complex, multi-flagged dialogue that's procedural, you need that to be maintainable, and having great big huge if-else statements are, you know, it will get the job done initially, but you need to, if you want to make changes, you're going to make life very hard for yourself if you're doing it that way. So I think a fairly standard way of doing this is to adopt a more sort of rules-based approach to dialogue. So you would have a, I don't know, like text is, I don't know, I'm looking forward to not being in work tomorrow, and the conditional for that would be day is Friday. So something like that. And then when you're deciding what dialogue to go to put through, and maybe just as an example of like, I don't know, like, conditional, and then we'll say day is not, for that exclamation mark meaning is not, Friday. Yeah, and then you basically, you've got information in one place. If you need to add multiple things, I don't know, text is, I don't know, at least the football is on. Conditional is day is not Friday, and football on, or whatever, like football true. Let's do that. And then you can sort of change these in one place. You might even like group these together, depending on how you're managing the conditionals, and say, you know, what are the most important things in my tree, you know, like, you know, football day, and then you take that, and this just becomes football day. It's true. The point is with all this stuff, this is really about project management and organisation and so on. Why am I banging on about this with dialogue trees? Firstly, I think to some of you this will mean nothing, and to others you'll be looking at it and thinking, well, that's really, it just depends on what you're doing. And it does. It just depends on what you're doing and how you manage it. So what's my procedural dialogue that I've been working on? Well, it's actually a really, really simple system. You just have a parametered opening line, 3-line system, a parametered response line, and a final line with some output in the code. So it's just 1, 2, 3. So it might be I don't know. You were fantastic in that last battle, and that might come in with. Can I give an exclamation mark? It's enthusiastic. And the response would be, "Thanks, you were great too." And what game? I don't know, like Zidane. And then the final line is like a Zidane and Steiner are pleased with one another. And then like a +2 relationship. Oh, that's good, isn't it? Right. Oh yeah, we have to do it like that. Well, it's not. This is obviously nothing to do with Zidane and Steiner. I'm just picking them because we played a game with them in recently. So that's the format, and that really shouldn't be that difficult. But Muggins here passed in, I want to say, I think it's 15 parameters go into this, of which around 10 are integers from 1 to 5, and the other 5 are true or false values, booleans. And that's for opening line 1. Now, some of you, I know for a fact, are maths grads. I know at least one of you is a maths grad. So first off, before we even begin, you'll have a look at that and tell me how many different combinations that is. And if you're not a maths grad, it's a lot. It's a rather silly amount. And this has brought in something like one of the first little lessons in this. I forget whose law it is. It's someone's law. Is it Stephen's law or something? But anyway, the law is this. The expenditure rises to meet the income. There, yeah. The point with this is, like, if you've got a if you earn, I don't know, £30,000 a year, $30,000 a year, I'm not very good with yen or rupees, but like however much you're earning a year, you will generally end up spending that. And then if you get another job and you end up getting £40,000 a year, you'll end up spending that too. What it means in this sense is, if you give yourself, and this is the one of the great tricks with all this, with writing video games, or indeed anything, well, no, just video games really, I suppose. If you give yourself that many options, you'll want to use them. as it stands, it's not fully optimized, not by a long stretch, but the existing line, not the logic, none of the logic for this, like none of the things with the parameters, just this. I've been like doing this week and trying to transfer it from an old system, and the file is, as it stands, thousands of lines long, and I've not even started on this, and it's just a 3-thing system. And it doesn't. Why has this happened? And I know why it's happened, and there's a couple of reasons really. Like the first reason that it happens is like you set out to make a procedural game. As soon as you set out to make a procedural game, you open yourself up to shit like this. Things just grow. It's not exponentially is the wrong word, but things will keep growing. The other thing is with this, and this is much more of I think a relevant lesson to the game design document side. I know we're talking about coding, but this is the thing that's led to it. My characters have driven the parameter matrices rather than the matrices driving the characters. Now, this is a really tricky one from a design point of view. But the more spread of personality I wanted in those characters, the more of these parameters I've needed. You know, like of the 15 parameters, like I think like 10 of them are baked in to the characters themselves, and using those 10, in fact it's the 1 to 5, 10 are baked in. So think about it, there's actually more of them. It's closer to 20 parameters, but that's another matter. 10. So 10 are what's the word I'm looking for? Iterables, and then another 5 are just integers. But the 10 things that define the personalities of the characters gives a really nice widespread on those people and gives them a lot of personality. But when it comes to writing these files, like, Jesus. And I think I saw recently somebody in somewhere in the game dev community who had purposefully created a program for writing dialogue trees. And, you know, I'm not here to talk on whether that was really good or really bad or whatever. I'm doing all this, in this case, I've been doing it, I must admit, in JavaScript, just because it started as a browser-based thing, and I just haven't transferred it yet. And it probably will stay forever in JavaScript now. Not that particularly matters, but it's its own engine. So, yeah. But yeah. It's just. It's been an absolutely, like, exhausting thing. And I suppose the other point with all this that's sort of baked in with it, and we are, right now, there is a I think I'm going to say a pleasing amount of kickback over AI. Like, people, Steam is requiring games to declare whether they've used AI. I think that's good. Gamers are finding out that games use AI, and even if it's just for tiny little things, are rejecting them. That's hard, but maybe that is fair. The thing with AI, to me, is I mean, like, people are like, think now a lot about like LLMs, really, with stuff like that. But even like coding assistants in like the sense of like things like IntelliSense and stuff have been around for ages. And I think that's there's been many things that are just baked into your IDE anyway. Some developers will completely turn off any form of Copilot or what have you, and there's definitely definitely an argument for that. I personally would have absolutely no problem playing a game that had its code generated partially with AI. I would have a much, much, much bigger problem, and I think this is generally the consensus view anyway, playing a game where the art was done by AI, like the visual art or the music was done by AI, or, God forbid, that the game design was done by AI. To me, like, I don't view AI as any more of a loss of creativity in the coding than I do, since with the invention of the compiler. These are engineering tools. But when you get into artistic media, such as the visual art that you'll do for things like this, the textures, the music, I think at that point it's like no, let us not have AI taking that part away. But not even but really, and this is where it comes down to all this, that like the temptation with these lines of dialogue, and it must be happening already, and you hope that it gets picked up and identified, because it's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of just like, could just let AI generate a few. And I don't think that's okay. I think, one of the things that I contemplated doing with this is not an LLM, oh God, sorry, speech impediment, large language model form of AI, but considering whether to make these three things out of procedurally generated components. So thanks could be thanks, or it could be thank you, or it could be cheers, or whatever, and then you get like a variety of responses, and you might even parameterize those individual parts to create something tailored. I had a look at doing that, and in my opinion it gave false variety. What you ended up seeing was, like, I'll just write it here. They all ended up looking hauntingly similar, and that is not good writing. You know, we're talking about this, by the way, in terms of these procedural things. I mean, like, as I say, I don't think there's a single game I can think of that we've covered on the channel in terms of the tier lists or Let's Plays that actually do any of this. This is something a bit more specific, sort of on the fringes of the genre, really, like diving into more sort of strategic or, I suppose, even sim waters with it. But it's just, you know, something I'm interested in. But yeah, so the only real choice has been to write thousands of the. Well, it's not even thousands. The problem is it's hundreds of lines of dialogue, but then trying to arrange them into these, which are a vastly more concise version than what it is in reality, has just been it's just been a nightmare. So I guess that's why you know, these are some of the reasons why people don't do this. I think as well, like, the other problem that I've got into, again, because of starting with the characters, I sort of mention it here, that the matrices, it's been really hard to order them, because the way that they are grouped, that there's so many possibilities. Like, if it was in like just like a simple 5x5 25 responses, then you would, you know, you could do them in sort of like batches of 5, and like you could link the properties there. But I mean, like 20 parameters, you know, 1 to 5. I mean, I'm not a mathematician, but you're talking like, I don't know, like, I mean, that just eyeballing it looks like a couple of 100 billion. You know, and I'm not saying that I'm using all of those, obviously. I'm cherry picking the ones I want. And in reality, even though there's that many different total possibilities, the real number of responses I expect to be for that parametered opening line, you know, well under 500. But how do you group those 500 when some things are being checked at some point, some things not being checked at others? So yeah, it's been a day. It's weird with this, because, like, I think writing stories, it's a bit like the art assets, really, I suppose, in this sense. It's like writing stories is one of the most fun parts of game design, I think. I love writing the stories for them. I love, you know, writing fiction generally. I think it's just great fun. But there is the act of writing fiction and creating that gets kind of a little bit like the concept art that you do for the art assets. And then there is generating art assets or dialogue that makes a game. And some of this has been, to be perfectly frank with you, I know it'll be worth it at the end, but it's like just fucking soul destroying. So yeah. Anyway, it was a quick half-an-hour video that just wanted to talk about what I'm up to. By the way, the game itself, I'm not going to talk about it on the channel very much. At some point, I'd contemplated whether or not to do any coding on stream several times, and I think the answer to that is no. I don't enjoy coding in front of people. I certainly can't talk about what I'm doing on anything like the same level I can do with things like this. In terms of the work, obviously there are like proprietary considerations, which mean that that's not there. Most of the time, people want to promote their stuff, but I sometimes do this just for the love of doing it. I don't necessarily know that I see a future in this project, although I have every intention of taking what I learn from this and copying and pasting components for other work. Not that that will affect anyone's front end, but yeah. On the other hand, there is a distinct possibility that the first game I do publish, if I ever do finally get over the bloody line, would be nothing like this. Okay, it's been an experience. But anyway, if you are, especially if you're like an amateur game dev yourself or a professional game dev yourself, leave a message in the comments. I'd be really not just interested, grateful, deeply grateful if you've got stories about like managing things similar to this. Like if there were traps that you fell into and you're like, oh, I wish I'd known this or this, or if you're looking into the rules-based system that I'm using, and it's like, I see huge problems here. Sometimes in code, some files, and it's all, spoiler alert, in video games, it's almost always the bloody dialogue files that are like this. Some files are thousands of lines long. But ideally, you have as few of those as possible, and you keep it tight, maintainable, and readable. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.